On today's episode, we interview the founder, the CEO of Quill. If you haven't heard of it, you definitely got to check it out. We'll put all her show notes down below, but we talk about so many things. We talk about how she's bootstrapped her business, talking about how you can get other grants and actually raise money without having outside investors. We talk about building a community and how important actually having like-minded women in your corner is. She's created a safe place in Toronto where you can go for breakfast and actually network and socialize with other like-minded women. So let's dive into this episode. You definitely will need this as a little pick-me-up and also just a nice reflection of what it's like to be a female founder. So Fatima, I'm excited to have you on today. I also love having other podcast hosts on as well. It just makes conversation so easy to flow and we can chat back and forth about all things business as well as wellness and all of the things that you do. I feel like you have so many things that go under kind of the umbrella of you as you, as well as all the things going on in your life. So we were just talking about weddings. We're both getting married this year, which is exciting. Yeah. Being an entrepreneur, as well as just you're doing a lot of conferences and talking to other like-minded entrepreneurs, which I think is amazing. So share a little bit about your story, kind of where you kind of saw yourself when you were younger to where you are now today, and your story. I'm so excited to hear about it.
So thank you for that lovely introduction, and congratulations again on your beautiful Muskoka wedding coming up. I'm Fatima Zaidi, founder and CEO of Quill. So Quill, our agency, is a full-service podcast production team. We create audio content. So we create podcasts for Fortune 500 brands. So we work with the PwCs, Expedias, the Microsofts of the world. And we're responsible for both creating the show as well as marketing their shows and bringing in their qualified audience. But then our agency also owns a product called CoHost, where we collect premium data for brands, agencies, and networks around the world who are looking to get a sense of who's listening to their show and how they're responding to the content. So think of us as the Google Analytics of podcasting, and on the production side of the business, think of us as a full service team that can come in and create an entire show end to end, as well as market the podcast for you.
Amazing. And are you based specifically in Toronto, or are you in other places as well?
No, we're actually a global company, and most of our clients are actually, I would say 90% of our customers are in the US and global. 10% are Canada. So we are a completely global company, both for the agency and product, and we're headquartered in both Chicago and Toronto. But ultimately what that means is we can hire both American and Canadian employees.
But that's amazing, because I feel like it's hard when you're in like a brick or mortar, or you're in like a physical location, where yours is like you can go anywhere, hire anyone, work with anyone. That's absolutely amazing.
Well, shortly after the pandemic, the industry moved entirely virtually. I mean, now we can record podcasts on Riverside Enterprise and Clean Feed and Zencaster, and it is exactly like being in studio. And the plus side is that you're not prohibited by geographic boundaries, which is nice. Like your guests and your hosts can tune in from anywhere in the world, and it's been a really great retention factor as well, because our company is completely remote, which means that people can work out of anywhere in the world. As long as they're in like the adhering time zones and travel at the same time, which has like been a really huge perk for everyone. And I think after the pandemic, things have gotten so expensive, and so being able to choose like where you can have your base has been like a really big retention factor for us.
Oh, definitely. And I think more people are wanting that lifestyle balance where they are able to record or build connections, whether they're on vacation or they're living somewhere 6 months out of the year or somewhere else as well, having that balance. That's what I find too, is a lot of the conversations we're having lately on the podcast, as well as just in person with some of our other like high performers or just entrepreneurs as well, is people are saying that is this year they're kind of starting to get that balance of that happy medium between work and real life as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, being like a successful entrepreneur isn't just about the cash flow, and while cash flow is king, it's like definitely about being a well-rounded person. And so balance is really important for us. Our mantra at Quill is we work really hard between the hours of 9 to 5, but evenings, weekends are our time. We do 2 weeks of closure over the holidays. We get 4 weeks beyond that as well. So we're taking on average of 6 weeks of vacation a year, maybe more. Um, and, for us, it's, balance is balance over time. And, we all perform better when there are things outside of your day-to-day job that you can be passionate about or dedicate your time to, whether it be your family or your side hustle or whatever it is that brings you joy. And I think that it's possible to be a very successful company and grow really quickly. I mean, we just hit the Globe and Mail's fastest growing company in Canada list, and we were also able to do that while really prioritizing work culture.
And that's what gravitates, I think, some of those people that really put the work in. Like you said, there's that like busy work, but it's like, are they actually being productive during that 9 to 5 as well, which I think is so important. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, I could still be working, but I'm like, am I actually being productive or doing something that's meaningful within that time frame? Or could I be out filling my cup, going for a walk, or doing an outside hobby outside of work, or creating different friends and relationships
Totally.
that way?
Totally. I always say to my team, if I'm not working overtime, there's no reason why anyone else should be. And you don't get a badge of honor for, you know, sending emails at 7 p.m. Nobody wants to read a 7 p.m. email. And so I think my hack has been, from a recruitment standpoint, hiring moms. They know
Mm.
how to prioritize and they know how to do their job well between the hours of 9 to 5, because they know there's no logging in to work at 7 or 8 p.m. or waking up early and getting some emails done. Like, they have that window and they need to ruthlessly prioritize. So I love hiring moms for that reason, because it's a skill that they've like already nurtured and developed.
And multitasking, like one of our highest performers, Danny, actually our podcast editor, shout out to her because she's obviously listening. She is like, even when she was just kind of transitioning from maternity leave back to work, like she's like, I have this window of nap time and I need to get these things done. And I'm like, holy, you get more done than sometimes I do even in a day, because she's like such a like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, she categorizes things. She has certain days that she does things on. I couldn't agree more. I feel like that is one of the biggest things when it comes to female founders as well as entrepreneurs. Is some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know have developed something as if they just finished maternity leave or just had children and then start this business. I'm like, how do you have the time to do this? But to your point, they're prioritizing when they need to.
100%. And like, for me, the things that bring me joy, yes, my company is a big part of it, but it's not the only thing. And how
Mhm.
sad would that be if that was the only purpose or legacy for my life?
Yes.
Um, there's actually, I'm looking at it right now. It's framed in my office. There's a palliative care nurse called Bronnie. Her name's Bronnie Ware. And her job was to take care of people in their sort of last days in palliative. And she actually wrote a book where she interviewed, I think it was like 50 or 100 of her top patients, and asked them, when on the day that they were dying, what were their biggest regrets were. And I actually have the top 5 regrets of the dying framed in my office. And one of them is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. That's
Mhm.
one of the biggest regrets that people have down the road, because it's like, you're not going to remember that 2 a.m. deadline that you had to hit, but you are gonna, miss or regret missing your children's milestones. So
Yes. Yeah.
I don't have kids yet. I think it's something that my partner and I are planning in the next couple of years, but I don't want it to get to that before I start prioritizing myself and my work-life balance and my world. I just like want to set us up for success before that.
Oh, I am the exact same. I think with both of us also getting married this year, it's kind of that mind frame of like, okay, once you're married, then the next steps in life. But it's like creating all the systems, the organization. I feel like that's what
Totally.
the world's been lately. And obviously, your success as well has been kind of prioritizing the work life balance part before we kind of have to do that, setting it up for
Totally.
that success before.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's such a refreshing, maybe millennial way of running a business. And to be honest, like, yes, for sure, maybe we're foregoing 10% less profits for like a healthier, happier, more balanced lifestyle, but I'm okay with it.
100%. And then when it comes to like, you have a speaking event this March, for example, what are some of the things that you're doing outreach to be able to go to some of these speaking events? Are people coming to you, or are you doing outreach with, or even the publications as well as people? Like, what's kind of the momentum there?
all been inbound. So I'm actually a member of the National Speakers Bureau. So that's the agency that represents me. And beyond the sort of speaking engagements they bring my way, it's mostly inbound. And I think with the work that I'm doing with Sick Kids, so I'm the chair of Tech for Sick Kids, and then I also teach at U of T, and then speaking and running Quill and CoHost, and it's there's just so many moving parts. And at this point in my career, it's no longer outbound grind and hustle. It's a lot of it is like years and years of hustling and knocking on people's doors and filling out every speaker application under the sun and really prioritizing building my personal brand. And there is a time for everything. Timing is everything. The first 10 to 15 to 20 years of my career, I was happy to put in the grind, put in the work, hustle, as they say. I'm just like in a completely different stage of my life right now. And it's more about, a slower pace. Less is more. It's about quality over quantity. And I did the work for 20 years and it was an overnight success and it was compounded over time. And so people ask me all the time, like, how are you getting so many speaking requests? And I tell them it was like years of rejection and years of me putting myself out there. And only in the last like 5 to 6 years has that effort and work amounted to the network and personal brand that I have today. But it certainly was a marathon, not a sprint. And there's no such thing as instant gratification or overnight success. Like you have to put in the hours and put in the slog. But I just like don't have the capacity to do that today in my career.
Hey there, beauty enthusiasts. Are you ready to take your skills to the next level and dive into the world of lash lifts, tints, and brow laminations? Look no further than Muskoka Beauty online courses. With Muskoka Beauty, you'll learn the artistry of lash lifts and tints and master the technique of brow laminations, all from the comfort of your own home. Plus, each course comes with a full kit included, ensuring you have everything you need to succeed. And here's the best part. Our listeners get an exclusive offer. Use promo code podcast10 to save 10% off any online course at Muskoka.com. So why wait? Elevate your beauty game today with Muskoka Beauty online courses. Visit Muskoka.com and enroll now. No, that totally makes sense. And that's what I think people see, right? When they're logging onto our social media or websites or seeing you, right? They're just expecting it to be like, oh, it all happened. Like I say that to my staff all the time. I go on vacation quite often, but I'm like, I didn't go on vacation for the first 5 years of opening my business, right? Like there was a lot of things.
Sad.
Yeah, there's so many things. But now I'm like, okay, I put the work in to now see kind of that aspect where I can step back or do the different things in that flexibility. But yeah, like you're saying, it is definitely a marathon, not a sprint, when all things in life are really like that. But it's making people realize that. That's why we love this podcast, is because it's like the raw behind the kind of behind the truth of what people see on social media or branding, right? What's actually happening. Now, connections, that's huge when it comes to marketing and getting a lot of those communication, like even what we're doing today, connecting on over a podcast as well. When it comes to Sick Kids too, I'm sure that just fills your cup up. That's just such a great part of what you do and kind of your why of why you almost wake up every morning, right? You have that purpose behind you more than just walking and talking every day. You've got something that's really purposeful behind what you're doing.
Definitely. I mean, the giving back to the community is I think baking philanthropy into your DNA really builds a better culture, and it, helps us give more purpose to the profits that we're bringing in from the business side. And just working with sick kids and supporting pediatric healthcare is definitely very rewarding. They're now the #1 children hospital in the world. They replaced Boston Hospital for first place. And some of the groundbreaking research work that's happening at Sick Kids is we're so lucky to have this hospital in our backyard. And like you said, in the next couple of years, people like you and I are planning to have children, and it gives me a lot of security to know that if something was to go wrong, I have the best hospital just sitting in my backyard. And I want to think of it as a community project rather than not really factoring and thinking about that it's a completely donations run operation. I mean, government funding and private donations is the way that they've been able to keep themselves at the standards that there are today. And I think in terms of the whole networking piece that you sort of mentioned, I I find that especially after COVID, we can all hide behind our screens and run our businesses from our couch thanks to digital ads and SEO without ever having to interact with the outside world. But offline tactics have the power of forming stronger relationships than online tactics. So I've built my entire network one handshake at a time by meeting people, going out for events, having conversations like this. And I don't think that offline component, that human connection, can be replaced by a lot of the time that we spend on scaling digitally.
Oh, 100%. I actually just saw a reel this morning talking about that of like, and I just had another interview as well. We were talking about that of having that in-person connection, feeling the energy, feeling the vibe, like you said, even that touch of even a handshake, actually understanding, like, yes, we can connect this way, but if we were having this conversation in person, I'm sure the energy and the elevation of it would just be that much higher. But even going to some of these networking and in-person events, like that's what I loved last year is I was really trying to get out of my shell. I feel like after COVID too, we were kind of like a little nervous of going out back into the world. But I think
Yeah.
that it's so motivating and being in a room with like-minded people and just elevating your self-worth and understanding that there's more people like you. You can't, I don't know, like you said, hiding behind a screen, it just doesn't do it anymore. And we've definitely, if you want to scale and grow, you've got to get yourself out there and going to some of these events. I feel like people are excited. We have a lot of our spa shows in my world of the beauty entrepreneur space that way, which is great. And that's what I say to people who come to me wanting to get into business or wanting to do
Mhm.
something. I'm like, network, get into some, like, even if it's like a small business startup program or start doing some YWCA women's events or start getting into fundraising and help build awareness of something that's meaningful in your community.
Mhm, mhm, 100%. It's, it's just one of those things where, community is everything, and I think there was, like, a study done, and I'm trying to remember who conducted this study, but it was, like, the number one factor of longevity and happiness, and they did a poll, and it was, like, a lot of countries in Africa, like Nigeria, and the one commonality that all of the countries that were the happiest had was their strong sense of community, which
Mhm.
it's definitely something that I feel like North Americans can learn because um, I don't think there's enough of an emphasis placed on community and like building your tribe and finding your people, which can be, especially after COVID, a really isolating experience. So anyone who is like taking the time to actually build community and help people foster those relationships, that's a huge win. For anyone listening, if you are in Toronto and looking to meet your business or work tribe, I actually own and run a quarterly women in business breakfast called Catalyst. And every quarter we get together between 50 and 100 executive women in business for a breakfast and networking event. It's small and intimate, so you can walk away with meaningful connections. And I've been running these events for almost a decade now, and it's been a really great place for me to meet other like minded women and for people to find new jobs, recruit people, partners, business relationships, or co founders. There's like a whole way that sort of network compounds into additional opportunities.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's gold right there. That's just insane. Because I feel like that's the thing. And they're like, where do I find out about these? And I think when following the right people and getting into those networks, then you'll be listening to other conversations and more
Yeah,
people will be inviting you to come out to these things. So that's amazing.
totally.
Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Now, when it comes to even opening up the door, having some of those conversations, what was kind of your stem to starting that? Were you kind of the same thing, working from home and realizing like, oh, I need to start building a community with like, especially like-minded women to get people out? Because you had started it how many years ago you had mentioned?
Almost a decade. So it's been a
Yeah.
while. Like now there's a bit of a wait list because it's kind of spiraled. I didn't want to increase the head count per event though, just because I think the thing that works is the intimacy of the
Yes.
smaller group, just because it's so overwhelming walking into a networking event with hundreds of people and like not knowing which like circle to infiltrate. So here it's very structured. You're on the table, there's like a set number of women on your table. You walk away knowing all of them, and it's not like you have to insert yourself into other conversations, which believe me, in the beginning of my career, I've done all of that. And it's so awkward and uncomfortable
Yes.
and just like goes against your like natural intuition of like hiding in a corner or like gravitating towards the people that you know. Um, it was a while ago, and it was I was in tech, so I was actually running a marketing agency where we did PR services for startups and tech companies, and I think we've come a long way in terms of representation in the tech community. Of course, we have a really long way to go, but back then it was so hard to find women in tech. I mean, other
Mhm.
than the technical engineering roles, I was like always in a room of like mostly male identifying folks. And so I was like, well, why don't we do something small where we, maybe 30 or 40 or even 50 people, where we like gather a group of women who are looking to meet other women in tech specifically. And turns out there was a lot of us. There was, we put a few call outs on social and reached out to our distribution and network list. And like all of these women came from the woodworks being like, oh, I would love to sort of meet like other women in tech. And for that reason, we kept it exclusively female identifying folks who would be able to join. And since then, the sort of organization or the group has like taken a life of its own. And now we have wait lists and the distribution keeps getting bigger and bigger. We keep having to rotate the faces and the people attending. But I would say the main reason that I thought of doing this is I felt super isolated in this community and felt like there weren't more people who looked and sounded like me. And if I can't even find those people, how am I going to get investments for my company? And
Yeah.
so over time, I've realized there's actually a lot of us, and there may not be the right structures and resources in place to connect us.
No, I love all of that. And at some of these events, do you have keynote speakers as well on like different topics, or is it mostly just networking within in the attendees?
So, the actual breakfast events that we do, there's no speaking just because the whole point of it is to walk away with meaningful connections. So, no long panels, no keynotes. I mean, I think there's so many events that do that already, like the
Mm.
conferences, the WXN, the Women of Influence events. Like, those are all really great if you're looking to like attend sessions and pick people's brain and like have like an educational resource. This was strictly like one-to-one connections and meeting people and walking away knowing 10 extra women that you can add to your network and build a relationship with. So we've never changed the format of the event just because it's worked, and we
Yes.
we know it works because we I was thinking the other day I should do some sort of like a family tree that shows like who's had relationships come through these breakfasts, who's like met their co-founders, who's hired people, who's gone and worked for someone. And I've heard these stories over the years, but I've never actually put it on paper. But I imagine that the network would be quite expansive if like I actually put it out into a tree to see like the impact that it had on all the people who have attended these events over time.
Oh my gosh, even for you, like what like inspiring thing you've created, right? That such an impact on not even just the tech world, but also like people creating that safe space for them to come and feel welcome to be able to talk about their businesses and network with each other and the possibilities and the growth that they've created within their careers.
Well, you should come to the next one. It's April 3rd. So if you're down from Muskoka, I would love to have you there. And I'd love to hear your feedback. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's a pretty great group of women and it keeps expanding and we keep sort of adding to the roster. And that's what I love about it is every breakfast is like a new set of faces, which is really nice. But um, there's always ways to make things bigger and better. And so always looking to hear people's feedback who are like new members.
Yeah, that's definitely been on my radar for 2024 is to try to get out because I mean, I feel like I've done a lot within our community here in Muskoka and I'm a part of a lot of like the YWC women's events and speaking events and such and speaking to like our youth at the high schools and such, but I definitely need to get more into the Toronto world because that's where a lot of the people we're interviewing on the podcast are from Toronto. A lot of the best people that we collaborate with beauty as well are in Toronto too and I think it's just such a I saw this stat the other day just talking about Toronto where sadly it is they say one of the loneliest cities because I feel like especially since COVID I feel like more people need to do what you're doing like getting people together creating that like morale
Mhm.
around group and inspiring each other and when it comes to in-person events like we were saying that energy and you just feel like you're on like this other high of like life after leaving an event like that so I
Totally.
just congratulate you so much on creating that space
Oh,
for
thank
other
you.
entrepreneurs. I think that's just incredible.
That's so interesting that Toronto's been listed as one of the loneliest cities. Honestly, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I've been here for a very long time. Almost, I moved here about 16 years ago, so I forget what it's like to be new. I also went to uni, which is a little different because
Yeah.
everyone's looking to make friends. But I can imagine moving here would be really difficult and feel very clicky in terms of like infiltrating towards the relationships that people already have. And it doesn't seem like a very social city to me, like a New York or a London. Like the culture isn't for everyone to just sort of gravitate together and build a community. So that's really interesting to hear, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, like I lived in Toronto for a month and then COVID happened. So I can't really say whether what I my feedback was, but especially being from a small town, I mean, I know everyone basically going through the grocery store. And like it's like a shock to the
Wow,
system from like being here to going to the city. But I also feel like you also got to put yourself out there. Like
totally.
you've got to like I talk to my fiance always laughs because he'll go into Starbucks if I have our dog outside or something and I'm sitting there and I always end up talking to somebody and I end up talking to them like in a conversation, not even like, hello, how are you? But I think it's a small town built in me where I just talk to strangers all the time. But
I
I
love
think
that.
putting yourself out there, right? You've got to try to go to some of these events. You've got to network with people, reach out, and even like on podcasts as well. Like if there's someone that you really listen to and inspires you, see if they're doing in-person events like you are, for example, is actually going and listening to them because there's obviously going to be very like-minded people at those events that are also
For
interested to
sure.
chat.
Absolutely. And I also love that you are doing the same thing out in Muskoka as well, because I imagine that in some of these smaller communities, while you might know a lot of the people, it might be hard to find like those business relationships. A
Yes.
friend of mine, I actually bought I guess a holiday home in Prince Edward County. And a friend of mine who lives out there had mentioned that when she first moved, it was so hard for her to find other entrepreneurs. And so I suggested, I was like, well, why don't you do something similar to what Catalyst is? And she started like an evening book club with other founders. And like there are so many entrepreneurs in the woodworks that you just don't know of if you don't put yourself out there. So I
Mhm.
love that you're doing that in Muskoka. And I actually have a couple people to send your way who live in Muskoka too, I'm sure are like desperate to meet their tribe.
Yeah, definitely. Cause I think it's one of those things where a lot, like I do work from home 90% of the time now. Even I'll run into some of my high school friends and they're like, what, you still live here? I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm just working from home. So, because even at our brick and mortar spa location, I'm not in there doing services anymore. I'm mostly
Yes.
online now. So it is hard because or I feel like when I do see people, I feel like I'm like a dog. I'm like, hi, how are you? What's going on? Like I'm just like overly hyper because I feel like I'm not getting that human interaction, which I'm used to. But I think having that like-minded group is really tricky in a small town and having that
Totally.
network around you. But we have to find those type of people to create that sense of community like we're talking about and that tribe that you need to for self-development and growth. Sometimes you need a little pick me up midday, and I'm not talking about another coffee. I'm talking about my Sage Peppermint Roller. I can't live without this thing. It's literally sitting on my desk right here. Whether I'm jumping into a podcast or I need to focus on doing some admin, I just do a little roll on my temples, sometimes even take a deep breath, and I just feel like I'm ready to do anything. Not to mention, we also use Sage products at our spa location. We love the liquid sunshine as our aromatherapy when coming into the spa. We love using any eucalyptus within our towel caddies, and even just in treatment to be able to really bring in and hone in that whole experience when being at the spa. So if you're interested in trying Sage or you're just wanting a discount, make sure you click the link below because you definitely want to get in on this exclusive discount that we offer on this podcast of Beauty Behind the Brand. And thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to share some key takeaways on some more episodes of why I love Sage and how we also use it in our day to day.
For sure. 100%. Cash flow is king in my opinion, but I would say community is a very close second.
Oh, yes, definitely. So let's talk about cash flow. What are some of the key things when looking in business and even I feel like personal finance as well? What is some of the key things that you tell entrepreneurs when starting a business when it comes to cash flow?
So, I mean, the first is we completely bootstrapped our business. And I think the media does a really great job of profiling companies that are raising capital, but they don't do enough of a job of profiling companies that manage to not take outside investment and still scale their businesses successfully. So my first sort of piece of advice would be, not every business needs to raise external funding. And there are a lot of models where you can definitely bootstrap and grow incrementally. And the huge benefit of that is being cash flow positive from day one. You kill what you eat. And I think that's one of the reasons that Quill has been able to scale as quickly as it has and grow as fast as it has, is we not only prioritize profits from day one, we were very much of the mindset that every hour that we could have spent pitching to investors, we were instead going to spend that time pitching to customers and finding product market fit. And so that's valuable time away from your customers. So really think long and hard about whether or not you need external funding, or can you tap into the amazing government resources that we have, like Shred and IRAP and Futurepreneur and OCI and Career Foundation. And I have a whole master grant sheet that lives publicly in various places that I've created with all of the grants available to Canadian entrepreneurs. And if you're a woman in business, forget about it, like 10 times more. So we tapped into all of those grants before we even considered raising funding, and turns out we didn't. So we just kept on bootstrapping, but we were able to bring in $250,000 in just grant funding when we started, which allowed us to really spend the time working on customers and sales. So that would be my advice, is really prioritize being cash flow positive from day one.
I love that. I think too is not getting that shiny object syndrome, like thinking you need all the things at once. Like you're saying,
Right.
like doing it kind of hour by hour of like, you have your mission, you know where your vision and where you're going to go, but it's like really taking that time and growing that business instead of just seeing what everyone else is doing and how they got there, really
Totally.
being okay with taking that step by step to make it your own.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that you can have everything, maybe just not all at the same time. I think that
Mhm.
that's really just the lessons of business for me at the very least. And I would say that when you find product market fit and then go out and raise funding, you're going to get a much better valuation than just raising it ideation or pre-seed. And so for me, I would like to have some traction and know exactly how I would spend that investment. Um, because that way you know that you're not parting with like a huge stake or a huge chunk of your equity, and rather you're spending that time prioritizing your sales. In the first couple of months, and this was a lesson that I'm not wise or anything where I just like figured this out because I like had this premonition. No, I was raising capital and then COVID happened.
Mm.
Um, we launched right before the pandemic, and I was raising capital and we were at term sheets. Someone was going to invest, and then he pulled his check because of COVID. Understandably, a lot of
Yeah.
people lost money in the market, but the money that he would have invested is how much money we make now in a month.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a prime
And I
example.
would have and I would have given away 20% of my business. And at the time, I was so devastated. Like it was like the worst thing in the world that was happening to us. And in hindsight, I'm so grateful. Everything happens for a reason. 2020.
Oh my gosh, we were just talking about the Taylor Swift, the rights and all the things that happening with her music.
And
And
Scooter Braun, yeah.
yeah, we were talking about that, but then like she kind of turned it around with the Aries tour and all the things and how she really made a kind of a bad situation become a way better opportunity for herself and redoing everything, right? So it's sometimes reflecting. I had the very similar thing happen with one of our recalls with one of our best-selling products, and it was like my world was crumbling around me, but then we were able to really push ourselves to get into the Canadian labs and creating our own products here and doing all the things that needed to be done. It's almost like it gives you that like extra little push, that extra nudge to just go out and do it yourself. That
Totally.
mentality.
You
Hmm.
can only connect the dots looking backwards, and like don't force it, because you just don't know when, this is very cheesy and cliche, but when one door closes, there's oftentimes a very good reason for it, and there's usually another door waiting to be opened. But you won't know it until you can historically look back and connect the dots. So the lesson that I learned from that whole experience and many other experiences I've had as an entrepreneur is that every day brings a new set of challenges, and there's no point borrowing worry from the future. Only spend time worrying about the variables that you can control. I can't control someone pulling their term sheet from us because of a pandemic happening around the world. I can control how I'm going to choose to spend my time after that.
Oh my gosh, that is gold right there. That is like, I feel like everyone can relate to that on any where they are in their business, personal life, anything. Where can everyone find you, Fatima? I feel like they need to follow you and get inspired. There's just so many things that you have to offer.
I'm pretty accessible in terms of reaching out to me. I'm on all of the social channels. So is my company, Quill, quillpodcasting.com, and cohostpodcasting.com is our product. So you can reach out to me on the website. Our social handles are, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of the above. My personal handle is Zaidi A Fatima. There's a letter A in between my last and first name. But yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you even just shoot me a note there or a friend request with a note, I will accept and always make time to chat.
Perfect. And we'll put all the details in the show notes below as well. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. I know you are very busy, so we appreciate all the time you had with us. And we'll definitely connect when I'm in Toronto. I'm really excited to come see you in person and network.
Perfect. That sounds great. And congratulations again on your puppy, your wedding, a lot of cool milestones happening. And
you too. I think of what we were saying about planning a wedding as well as entrepreneurship, all the things at once. It's a lot going on, but they're all exciting things.
Yes, it's a lot happening, but if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Exactly, 100%. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, Fatima.
Take care.